So for what would have been Adepticon, we now have our first ever Warhammer preview online. Now, this is going to cover a number of things. We're going to go into Age of Sigmar, we're going to go into Warcry, we're going to go into Warhammer 40k, Horus, Heresy, tons of stuff. And, of course, some of the new things that they're bringing to the small screen, the big screen, whatever it is. So let's dive in here. I'm excited to talk about a lot of these things. There's a lot of really cool models that are being added to the game, even for systems that I don't even play anymore, like Lord of the Rings. So let's take a look at some of this stuff. So first up is, of course, the latest from the Story Forge. And that is going to be another little bit of a preview here. So let's watch this. So this actually could be pretty sick. I think that taking the format of Hammer and Bolter is a pretty good one. I think that it's going to be interesting to kind of see how this is done, because Hammer and Bolter is typically an anthology of a lot of different stories. Death's Hand is part of an animated anthology series called Hammer and Bolter. We'll have more updates on that soon. For more on Death's Head, Angels of Death, which is the other one that we saw last feature set, I believe it was earlier this year, where they showed, I think it was Blood Angels actually. So we got to see like a CG versus this being more anime style of art being conveyed to show off some nice Space Marines. So it's exciting to see Games Workshop jumping into this. You know, we also know that we're getting I believe it's a Netflix series, or is it a Hulu series? We're getting a series from Games Workshop as well for Eisenhorn. So we have a lot of really fun stuff coming from Games Workshop from Warhammer 40k, and I think that Warhammer 40k is a good place to jump into, because I think Warhammer 40k, as far as their IPs go, it's very unique as far as sci-fi is, and I think it's one that resonates pretty well with people because it's not overly complex unless you really want to get into like the deep lore. But for the most part, it's a pretty straightforward set of lore, and it's pretty understandable for a lot of people and relatable. So I think, well, not relatable as in anyone can relate to being a Space Marine, but relatable in the sense that they've seen similar forms of sci-fi that I think now that since sci-fi is such a mainstream thing, it'll be easier to crack into than it would have been, say, like 10 years ago. So we do get another Age of Sigmar opening, and you know I'm excited about this the most, is going to be the Lumineth, the Realm Lords, yet again. And we'll watch this little guy here. Welcome to I'm actually going to jump forward. They're just kind of saying like, hey, what do you recognize elves for? Long spears is one of them. Elves can't be trusted. Elves can't be trusted. Hilarious. Scheming scoundrels. Now only one correct answer. I apologize, guys. The allergies are really bad today.
Squishy wimps. Oh, sorry. It's not on the board. Anyone? Giant war cow made of rock and armed with a massive hammer. Yes! Giant war cow made of rock and armed with a massive hammer is our top answer.
Boom. So we basically now get High Elf Dreadnoughts. Or I guess you could say it's like the same thing as the Eldar have with their Wraith Lords. So, let's take a look. I did not see this picture. So looking at this picture, it's every model we've seen announced. I'm just making sure that, so sometimes they hide little things in the corners here. So looking at this, we have Valinor, the Stoneheart King. That's what he's called. We have Teclis, and then we have got these the Sentinels, or these are the Sentinels, and these are the new Archers. We have Eltharion right there. Then we also have the new Silverhelm units, and then the new units here as well as the new caster. So we'll talk about those new units too. So we still don't see any hint of Teclis. And Teclis, as we know, he's the blind king now. He's the sun god of the elves. And I'm not sure now if we'll even get him. I thought in the past, you know, we definitely would. But we have Eltharion, we have Teclis, and now we have this guy, Valinor, the Stoneheart King. He's this one right here. He's the eldest and wisest of the mountain spirits that march to war with the elves. Take a close look at the model that is redefining what it means to be part of an elf army. And he's pretty beastly looking. And now we also have Alarith, Spirit of the Mountain. Part mystical creature, part mountain, and it can go toe-to-toe with a bloodthirster. What more could you ask for? And of course, we wouldn't have a Warhammer preview without some actual Warhammers. I'll go to them in just a little sec. But it's interesting that we're getting these two large centerpiece dual kit units, lords, heroes, whatever. And we also have, you know, this large centerpiece unit with Techless. So will Tyrion be a smaller scale like Eltharion, or will Tyrion just get his own army? I mean, these are the Lumineth Realm Lords, which it doesn't... It talks about the Elf Society being divided between Techlian and Tyrionic value systems and factions, more or less, but not necessarily in the sense that they're at war. It's all about harmony, and it's about removing their emotions from the equation. It's the same thing. They've got these, it's like soul stones, but not really soul stones. It's an Age of Sigmar twist. So we've got this dual-wielding Warhammer badass, and we have this big meaty badass bro. And we can see here that they have like the big old horns that are kind of reminiscent of Techless. They have a lot of the runes that we've seen make their way across all the models of the Lumineth Realm Lords, I guess Pantheon, or I guess Lumineth Realm Lords range. So we have now the elite infantry units of them in these guys, the Alarith Stone Guard. Now, the Alarith Stone Guard here are pretty interesting because they've got these big two-handed hammers, or they're dual-wielding hammers, and I think this is going to be a dual kit with something else. That's typically the case. We usually see some form of dual kit that can be made into this version or another one. Take the Idoneth Deepkin, for example. The Morskar Guard are the ones that can have the shield, or the ones that don't have the shield. It's the same exact box, you just don't put the shield on them. So for these guys, I could picture them actually having a different variation. The helmets are a little interesting, gaudy, over the top. They remind me of the Teutonic Knights with their big, huge blazoned helmets with sometimes a bull on there, whatever kind of effigy they want to put on the top of their helmet. But it's an interesting model and step in their direction. And this is almost like the Phoenix Guard of the world that was, and the High Elves that were in, of course, you know, the Phoenix Guard. So it'll be interesting to see if this is going to be the unit that replaces, quote unquote, the Phoenix Guard, and if we're going to get one that replaces the Swordmaster of Hoeth, and if it's going to be a Techlian style unit, or I'm sorry, a Tyranic style unit, and if we're maybe going to get a heavy cav unit that is going to replace the Dragon Princes. I mean, we still haven't gotten that far into the Lumineth Realm Lords. We don't know where Tyrion really plays a part in this. We constantly see him mentioned, but we haven't really seen a lot about him. So it gets me to wonder if they will actually give him his just own faction overall, and he'll be kind of the knight, quote unquote, faction that a lot of people have wanted for Age of Sigmar, or if this is going to be such a huge range that they're doing a big deal drop on it. The Bone Reaper Osiarchs, or Osiarch Bone Reapers, I think it actually is, had a pretty good sizable army dropped. So that could be the case here. Now I compare this, of course, to the Idoneth Deepkin, which only have about 12 kits in total, and that's including their dual kit portions. So we'll see what happens as the Lumineth Realm Lords come revealed to us. This is only the first Warhammer preview. We'll have another one coming sometime later this year. Now we're also going to jump over to Battle for Middle-earth here with the Lord of the Rings board game, and I'll just quickly touch on these models. We get Eomer, and he looks great. He looks really goddamn good. And I'm not going to lie, the actual rules for Lord of the Rings are very fun and very interesting. So if you've not played Lord of the Rings, you owe it to yourself to just kind of quickly take a look at the rules, see if they would play for you. It's a pretty low model count board game, so you can jump into it pretty minimally invasive and still kind of come out on top. And all the color schemes are very simple. They're very earth tony, they're very metallic, so it's easy to paint them up and kind of move on. Like, take a look at this. It's mainly just bronze, silver, and some red. You know, I mean, there's not, and of course some brown in there too. But there's not a huge crazy color palette where you're going to be mixing blues in there, and then you're going to have some gold trim, and have this and that and this. It's a pretty easy to do painting scheme. So if you want to get into Lord of the Rings, I definitely recommend checking it out. It has a pretty cool and diverse rule set. Now, the next chapter of the Psychic Awakening is coming. And with this, we get the Clone Father. Now, we know that the Big Daddy Clone Father, I'm going to turn this down. And we know that the Clone Father is responsible for cloning Horus, for cloning a lot of big deal characters in the lore.
I only hope for long enough.
Let this kind of play out.
Brace yourself. This is going to hurt. A lot. Even in death, I will see you serve.
Oh shit. So that's pretty crazy. I mean, this is definitely hinting towards something having to do with, take a look at this little guy. This little picture should animate in a second here from our old Fabius Bile. Oh man, this is such an old model. Oh, it's parallax, so I gotta go down. And our new Fabius Bile. And a lot of the same aesthetics being done here, but just taken, like, take a look at just like the valves right there. Like, isn't that sick? Look at his head. Someone made the joke that he looks like Gozer from Ghostbusters 2. And I totally agree. So just that increase in stature, the whole pose is a lot better looking. I mean, he looks pretty goddamn dynamite. Now, Fabius Bile himself has had a pretty wonky ride through the lore, and he's done quite a bit. You know, he's been there since the very beginning. You know, he's been there during the Horus Heresy. We've seen him in the Horus Heresy, and we've seen how he's going to take center place in the War of the Spider. And it looks like we're going to be seeing Custodes in there. I actually don't know that symbol. There are also additional rules for each of the 7 plague companies of the Death Guard and a new Chaos Space Marine subfaction called Agents of Bile, representing the twisted creations of the Clone Father. So this is going to be interesting. Oh, it's going to also include what is going to be called the Talons of the Emperor, which is supposedly supposed to be the Custodes and the Adeptus Custodes and the Sisters of Silence put together, and that's what they're going to be called from now on. It's not going to be separate. We'll see if that's actually going to come to the fore here. But it's going to be Death Guard, Officio Assassinorum, Talons of Emperor, and also it's going to take place along with background on the battle taking place amid the ruins of the Cadia system. The book will include new rules for the Adeptus Custodes, Sisters of Silence, and Imperial Assassins. I mean, Assassins just recently got a whole new revamp to the rules, so this is going to be pretty interesting. So we'll see what kind of flushes out with this. But like I was saying for Fabius Bile, he's all about kind of twisting the machinations of the Imperium, right? Making his own little tiny experiments. There was an old story about him bringing Sanguinius back to life as far as a clone goes and invading Baal. I don't know if they actually retconned that, or if the ultimate story was that they recovered the ruin or the remains of Sanguinius and he's fine now. But at one point in the lore, Sanguinius' remains were desecrated by the Emperor's children, and they took them and then thus cloned Sanguinius. And Fabius Bile has cloned Horus. We know that from the Abaddon, the Despoiler trilogy, which is on book 2 right now. So Fabius Bile has a pretty long-standing history of really messing with a lot of the things that the Imperium has in mind. And when you hear that, this clip here, what does he say right here?
Death. Even in death, I will see you serve.
And that could either be hearkening to the Primaris or to Dreadnoughts of some sort, because the old Dawn of War saying for the Dreadnoughts was, "Even in death, I still serve," which is so goddamn badass. But we see his little dude here sucking down looks like he's pulling out the gene seed of a Primaris Marine. So that could possibly mean that he's going to use the additional glands and make his own Chaos Rubicon. So we'll see how our Primaris Rubicon. But we'll see what goes on here. The whole thing with the Primaris is they're not supposed to be able to be corrupted, but that's not to say that maybe Fabius Bile will find a way to create Chaos Primaris, not actually corrupting them, just actually taking the organs and making his own. So we'll see what happens here with the War of the Spider and how that kind of shakes out with the next Psychic Awakening after, I believe this is after Engine Death. But we'll see what comes up with that. Now for Warcry here, we got Scions of the Flame. Look at these guys, they're pretty insane looking.
Only through fire can we be pure.
God damn. Every Warcry's got newer and cooler models.
Can we find power?
Like, this guy looks straight like he's out of Conan the Barbarian.
Only through fire
That guy looks like he's a Hot Pocket in a microwave oven for way too long.
and the realms be cleansed. Unleash the flame within.
I still haven't gotten into Warcry, but every time they release a warband, I'm like, damn, maybe this one. Like, dude, look at this guy's got a 19.5 pack. Like, he doesn't worry about the shortage of toilet paper. He's burning right through it, quite literally. I mean, each one of these is cooler and cooler and cooler every time they release something. Like, I kind of like this whole... I like the face masks. This almost looks like dystopic face masks, as well as like the gladiatorial single arm piece armor and stuff like that they're wearing, or like just these big huge glaives with like the chains on them. Like, really awesome aesthetic across all these models. And I think it's going to be a really, really cool range for Warcry. Now, again, I have not played Warcry. I couldn't tell you guys a whole ton about it. I do know though that a lot of Warcry models can be used in Age of Sigmar, if I'm not wrong there, or maybe I'm just thinking of Underworld. But either way, take a look at these models. They're coming out soon. They're hot and sexy, quite literally hot. Now, the next thing for 40K, and our last thing in this video here, is the Horus Heresy. And this will cover...
What do you look for in a Primarch?
The very first... well, the Primarch of the First Legion.
Unbridled ferocity. Stoic resolve. Angelic features. Or maybe you'd rather not have to choose. This is not just any Primarch. This is the first Primarch. This is the Lion.
And goddamn, he looks awesome. Easily, hands down, the best looking Forge World model. Because I think all of them look terrible. I think a lot of them look really bad, especially Sanguinius. Like, this really captures how terrible Sanguinius looks right here. Like, he just does not look happy. He looks very upset. But that's actually a really good, solid face for Lionel Johnson. Then we can go down here. You can get it either way, right? You can have him with the power sword and with the bear helmet, or with his chain sword. And it says right here, this impeccable fighter can even has a choice of which weapon he will cut through the traitors with: the lion sword or the wolf blade. And of course, it's going to be during the Thramos Crusade, so he's over here fighting the Night Lords. And look at that helmet too. Like, this is such an awesome embodiment of Lionel Johnson, and I'm stoked to see it coming to Horus Heresy. And hopefully, this is a kind of a taste of things to come, as Lionel Johnson, Leman Russ, and Fulgrim are the three leading Primarchs to return in a 9th edition Warhammer 40K. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video here today as I cover all of the stuff that was released in the most recent preview on Warhammer community site. I'll link this in the description, so if you want to watch this or you want to read through this stuff yourself, you're more than welcome to. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Go ahead and let me know in the comment section what you're most excited about with this big preview. I'm going to go back to the Lumineth Realm Lords because we know what I'm most excited about. But as always, have a good one and take care.